Lesson 7.7 is on deportation from Salonika and Thrace to Treblinka. There was one deportation from Salonika to Treblinka of about 4,000 Jews. All the Jews were selected for gassing. Then there were 3 deportations from Greek Thrace under the Bulgarians, and one boat, the Karageorgi, was sabotaged. The other 2 were sent from Lom on the Danube River to Vienna, and then the people were taken to Treblinka and gassed. According to the Treblinkan Jewish inmate Samuel Willenberg, the following events are recalled in terms of the arrival of the Salonican Jews in Treblinka. In the beginning of spring 1943, the whistle of the train informed us of the arrival of a new transport. From the wagons, a slight weird crowd exited. The people that arrived had dark faces, curly hair, and black as a crow, and they spoke a foreign language. Upon the suitcases that they took out of the wagons, there were stickers with the address Saloniki. In a lightning speed, the message of the arrival of the Greek Jews spread throughout the camp. Amongst the arrivals was an especially large number of wealthy people of the intelligentsia, professors and lecturers. Though they made their way to the camp in wagons, they weren't crowded in as usual, and what appeared to us as being the strangest was that the wagons were not closed and locked, and not labeled. They all were dressed well, and brought with them immense baggage. We looked in amazement at the wonderful oriental carpets, and principally at the huge food reserves. The Jews brought with them also much clothing, various types of furniture, and possessions of all sorts. They all went down from the train cars relaxed, fully and completely calm. Women dressed finely, nice children and men straightening and fixing up the wrinkles of their elegant clothes, passed calmly from the ramp to the transport amassment area. Miete found 3 Greeks who had a good command of the German language, and gave them the job of translation. None of them understood where they had arrived and what their fate was to be. The sad and tragic reality revealed itself to them only when they marched completely naked to the pretend washing, and when unexpected beatings landed upon them that the Germans gave them and yelled, "Schnell, schnell, go fast." In the meantime, the storehouses of the new camp filled up. Our stock was enriched by lamb, large amounts of cooking oil, canned meat, fish, sardines, wine, cigarettes, etc. Miete and the other SS men went about happily, and their faces radiated from joy. In their being in an elevated mood, they tapped on our shoulder and said that finally the bad times in the camp had finished, that we wouldn't know more starvation, and that there would be many more transplants like this to come. We worked energetically, and everything was according to the words of the SS men, alles in Ordnung. As a repayment of our exhausting work, they began to hand out cigarettes to us, 3 cigarettes a day for every prisoner. This, of course, came from the transports from Greece. We received simple cigarettes. The refined type was meant for the German staff of the camp. The SS people saw themselves as the elite, that the Führer had assigned them a difficult and responsible position. They greatly loved to talk about this with the commander of the camp, and he told this to us. Willenberg claimed that shortly after the first transport, 15 other transports of Greek Jews arrived in Treblinka. Thus the prisoners were heavily worked, and the warehouses were overflown as the death process continued. This estimation is greatly exaggerated. Only 3 deportations of Thracian Jewry followed the Salonican deportation, and 3 Macedonian deportations of 7,123 Jews from Monastir, Štip, and Skopje arrived during the same time period. The Bulgarian military organized the arrests and the deportations of the Jews of Greek Thrace on March 4th at 3 a.m. More than 4,000 Jews were arrested from communities like Komotini, Seres, Xanthi, Kavala, Alexandroupolis, etc., and were sent to deplorable conditions in the internment camps in Bulgaria, in Dupnica and Gorn Jumaya. Trains from these 2 locations arrived in Lom on the Danube River on March 19th, 20th, and 20th, 1943. The first researcher to unravel all of this was Frederick Cherry. Okay, so here he gives a depiction, first of all, of the Jews in the Gorm Jumaya. The first stations on the Thracian Jews' journey to Poland were the departure centers in southwest Bulgaria, Gorn Jumaya and Dupnitsa. In all, over 2,500 Jews actually went to the former camp, and fewer than 1,500 to the latter. Apparently, only the Gumulgina, meaning Komotini, and Xanthi Jews went to Dupnitsa, and the Kev, the Commissariat for Jewish Affairs, ordered the entire remainder to Gorna Jumaya. In Gorma Jumaya, the Commissariat confined the deportees in 3 different places. Most Jews were held in the Rainov Tobacco Warehouse and the School of Economics, but some stayed in the Progymnasium. The Jews had to walk over a mile from the station to the camps. These camps received 5 tons of flour from the local commissariat of supply and rented 3 ovens for the baking of bread. The Jews at Gorna Jumaya received about 5 ounces of bread a day. Ivan Topavsky, the Kev deputy chief of service and the camp's commandant, also bought onions, beans, rice in smaller quantities to prepare hot food, bean soup for the Jews. The camp commander purchased dried goat's meat and mutton for use on the trip north. Observers unfriendly to the commissariat described the fare as meager and of poor quality. Dr. Yosef Confino, who worked in the camp, in a statement for the People's Court, suggested that the camp administrators stretched soup for 1 meal for use at 2 and stole what they saved from the food budget. On March 20th, 1943, the first boat of deportees, the Kara-Georgi boat, left the port of Lom on the Danube River at 2 p.m. Most of the passengers were from Kavala and Komotini. Unfortunately, none of the 1,100 passengers, nor the boat itself, ever arrived at its destination in Vienna, where the Jewish deportees were to be sent by train to Treblinka. The boat had no accompaniment of doctors, nor any returning witnesses, including the crew. This is what I wrote previously, but in the war trials, there were doctors, and then they came back to Lom and then Sofia. Cherry wrote the same thing. The first ship, the Gorm Jumaya, left Lom at 2 p.m., March 20th. The second voivoda Mashiach left that evening. 2 Saturns and Tsar Dushan left the next evening. Each ship had 875 to 1,100 passengers. In all, 4,219 Jews left. As arranged, a Bulgarian Jew guard went along, and Bulgarian doctors, whom the commissariat had requested from the director of public health, traveled with the Jews as well. Jewish doctors of Bulgarian citizenship did not accompany the ships, for the Germans would have not have allowed them to return. Kalitzin reported once again that the departure took place without incident. Well, none of this is actually correct. There were the Bulgarian doctors on board, and they reported in the war trials. All right, so I uncovered these photos in all sorts of places, in an archive, in a basement, in London, and the photos of the boat indicated on the reverse side through various Hebrew sayings, Oniat HaMavet, the death boat, B'derach LaMavet, on the way to death, and Beit HaMavet Hashat, the floating house of death, that the boat had a dark destiny. These, amongst other indications, point to the possibility that the boat was sabotaged by the Germans and the Bulgarians. This set of pictures arrived from the Zionist Federation of England. Photos showing the registration process on land before boarding the boat at Lom arrived from a photo store in Istanbul, near the Mossad La'Aliyah Bet, the illegal immigration movement of the Haganah, in their offices in Istanbul. In a file at the Central Zionist Archives, labeled The Deportation of the Jews of Skopje and the Deportation by Boat from Lom, there appear pictures taken by a Mossad agent showing German soldiers at Lom. When one of the following boats leaving from Lom arrived in Vienna, the Germans noticed the absence of men and commented to their dismay about the human material that had arrived. Those sent on the Kara-Georgi boat were taken to shore from the Danube River and executed by the German and Bulgarian soldiers. This was confirmed as the German post-World War II trial of German ambassador to Bulgaria, Beckerle. In accordance with the Treblinka and Bulgarian records, 4,200 Jews left Lomme en route for Vienna, but only 3,000 arrived in Treblinka. And at any rate, of all these Jews, there was no trace. They either were killed in the Danube River or they were gassed in Treblinka.